Hello and welcome to the Festival of Place Climate Resilience. My name is Murray. Hello again. Welcome to the Festival of Place, I'm Christine Murray. This is Climate Resilience. I'm so glad our Sting video got us going there with a laugh. I'm the founding director of the Festival of Place and the developer, which seeks to break down silos and bring the built environment industry together to learn, connect, and unpick how to create better buildings and places. Thanks for being here. You've already found the emoji button. It's one of our favorites. So yeah, that's just located at the bottom of the screen there if you want to join in and say hello to each other. Of course, we've got our chat over on the right-hand side. The climate emergency demands that we take action to reduce carbon emissions. The built environment is part of the problem, responsible for 40%. It's often said. But it's also part of the solution through retrofit, land renewal, energy conservation, material innovation, and to mitigate and protect communities from the impact of warming. This year's event is all about making choices, and there are so many decisions to be made as we engage with the complexity and discern the right direction in the context of the climate crisis, how to stay the course in a time of political and economic flux, and make the best decisions that we can every day. So it's my pleasure to welcome Samantha Veal, Director of Igloo and CEO of Blueprint JV, to share the footprint process with you this morning, which has been described as the most comprehensive and holistic model for reviewing the impacts of design and investment decisions. So I'm going to introduce you, Sam, and I want to hear that first emoji applause or see that emoji applause. Sam joined Igloo in 2018. She is an executive director responsible for overseeing project delivery across the wider Midlands region. She also leads the Blueprint team, delivering a full range of services to the Nottingham-based innovative public-private sector joint venture. Sam, you have over 30 years experience in development management, public and private sector partnerships within the residential sector and beyond, and you work closely with clients, partners, and local communities to ensure the work delivers value and impact. I'm really looking forward to your talk, and welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Christine, and good morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here. As Christine said, I'm Sam Veal. I'm a director of Igloo Regeneration, and I'm going to talk to you about Igloo's footprint process, which is our sustainable development and investment methodology. We apply that to all of our projects, and it's how we at Igloo navigate some of those difficult decisions and trade-offs that I'm sure all of you have experienced through your work. So Igloo is the UK's leading regenerative developer of sustainable neighbourhoods. We're a B Corp, and we have been for quite a number of years now. And our approach is place-based. So whilst our methodology is consistent across all of our projects, the outcomes differ from place to place. And our vision is always to make places that people love that are good for the planet. Now, we work across the UK, so I have colleagues as far north as Glasgow and working as far south as Cornwall. And we're very active in the northeast, here in the Midlands, of course, and also in the southeast. And in doing our work, we work with a variety of clients. We work with a lot of local authorities. Christine said that I'm responsible for a joint venture here, which is a public-private joint venture, a local authority and an impact investor here in Nottingham called Blueprint. But as well as those individuals, we work with legacy landowners. Obviously, we work with communities, key agencies like Homes England and combined authorities, NHS trusts and impact investors. And they all share a commitment to development and social impact. But of course, the majority of them need to balance that with a financial return. We do have some legacy clients who are less focused on return, but of course, they still need to break even. And then some of our clients are entirely reliant on public funding and have incredibly strict cost restrictions. So footprint is the tool that helps us to navigate those different drivers whilst identifying and delivering for a specific community. The outcomes are bespoke, but the approach is a consistent model that we apply across all of our work. Now, Footprint has existed for in excess of 20 years, and it's always been about people, place and planet. But of course, as a methodology and targets, they've evolved over time. Now we're centered around thinking about 6 dimensions. These are the images you see in front of you. So well-being, community, place, nature, climate, and circularity. And what we do is we think about our projects in terms of these 6 dimensions. And in doing that, that supports the creation of a framework which helps us deliver planet positive outcomes for each individual place or neighbourhood. Now, forgive me, this is a very busy slide, but if you bear with me, I'll walk you through it. So the green boxes are effectively the classic development roadmap, the classic development timeline, and then everything that sits within the blue box is part of Igloo's footprint approach. So as you can see, the sort of top green arrows, that's the development timeline that's consistent across. Oh, hang on, I'm being asked to make the thing bigger. That helpful? Is consistent across all of the development timelines. And then the green larger boxes underneath, that's Igloo's process and how it maps against that timeline. So we always start with the go, no go, stage 0 on your screen there. And our go, no go is incredibly important. Clearly, it picks up all the things that we all do when we're approaching a project or a new client, around resources, around competitive advantage, around timing, all of those things. But importantly, it also makes us check that our values and our clients' values aligned. We're very fortunate at Igloo to work with some very committed clients, and that's fundamental to the success of our process, we find. And then we think about the sites in question and what will our opportunities be against people, place and planet for those individual places. And typically, what kind of sites are they? So we generally work with brownfield site. We need quite compelling rationale really to work on greenfield, and that's been our bread and butter over all these years. And then getting into the blue box, getting into the footprint process itself. The metrics you see on the left-hand side in that yellow box, those are all industry recognised benchmarks. And I think it's important to say, footprint is not about reinventing the wheel. There's a plethora of really high quality, great information and guidance out there. And obviously we want to use that and we want to bring that into our process. These are excellent reference points. You know, as I said, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. And we see those metrics as the foundations for all of our projects. But of course, these metrics, they are nationally available tools. And as a consequence, they'll often deal with averages. And so we use footprint to identify the place-based initiatives, which are unique to that particular place and the local community. What good looks like varies from place to place. And I know from even just working within a relatively tight geography here in Nottingham sometimes can differ even within that sort of geography. So once we get past the go, no go, once we get through that screening process, our footprint process really starts with a co-creation event. Now, this involves the whole team, project sponsors and local stakeholders. And this is effectively where the strategies relevant to the place are gathered and filtered through the footprint dimensions. And I'll talk a bit more in detail about that later in my presentation. This ultimately creates an action plan for the scheme, which sets out what it is we're going to do and how we're going to approach that particular development. Now, the plan is key. It's the golden thread that runs through all of our projects. And you'll see that there are review sessions in the dots that run along in the blue box there. So at each stage, the plan is reviewed and checked and tested to make sure that we're remaining on track and that we're keeping focused on the things that we said we were going to deliver. Footprint is a continual learning loop. So post-occupancy and outcome measurement is fundamental to that. It not only demonstrates that we've fulfilled our objectives, but also that learning, because invariably there's always learning in every project, feeds back into future projects. And of course, you know, the whole process needs governance. So it's subject to independent scrutiny through our Footprint Advisory Board and also through third-party independent verification. It's really important for us that we understand that we did what we actually set out to do. So just thinking about co-creation, the images that you see in front of you are a session, a co-creation event that we ran in the Wirral just over a year ago. And effectively, the co-creation is where lots of ideas and proposals are generated around whatever the proposal is, whether it's you know, a big master plan neighbourhood area or whether it's just a small particular site. And the point is that the team, the stakeholders, the project sponsors come together and they debate and set out their ambitions for that particular project or place. And this generates a lot of information, a lot of goals and aspirations. And you'll see in the bottom right there, you know, invariably there are a lot of post-its involved. But effectively all of these ideas go down onto post-its and then they get organised into those 6 dimensions. So is this a proposal about climate? Is this a proposal about well-being, etc.? And then there's a big sifting job to be done in terms of organising all those ideas. And our approach is to use the grid that you see on the top right-hand side of the screen. So looking at the vertical axes, the top there is high impact and the bottom is low. And then on the horizontal axes, we've got easy to do on the left-hand side and hard to do on the right-hand side. So as we organise all those thoughts, if we've got hard to do and low impact, well, they're clearly the don't bother, so just, you know, put them to one side. We're not going to spend any energy on those. And if they're the easy to do but low impact on the bottom left, well, then again, you know, that's not really where we want to concentrate our attention. Our key focus is always in that top right-hand quadrant. So high impact, but harder to achieve. And this is effectively where we concentrate our energy. These are the things that go into our footprint action plan. These are the things that we keep focused on as a project team as we progress the project. Now, the top left-hand quadrant, the holy grail of high impact and easy to do, well, they're the just do it's. And of course, you know, that's the stuff you just want to get on with within a project. We do record those on the action plan, though, because it's important to be reminded of those. And as you'll see, as we kind of move through the development timeline, sometimes the categorization of those can change if circumstances change or market forces change. So as much as we would love to be at the exemplar end against every dimension for every project, it's not feasible. And typically, what we see is our projects focus on 1, 2, or 3 dimensions in terms of being at the more exemplar end of what we're delivering in a project. The viability is key to the project continuing. So, you know, this is the co-creation is where those difficult decisions and that decision making and trade-off starts to happen. So the image you see in front of you is really a visualization of how we approach our projects and demonstrates, you know, how we have to trade off across the dimensions, but always from a very firm foundation. So, for example, the black dots on your screen, that's industry, that's market practice, and we always operate at above market bench lines across all of the dimensions. But then we look to see which dimensions are most important to a particular place and how might we optimize what we deliver against those. So you'll see there are some sort of lighter green dots and some darker green dots, and you've got darker dots there against nature, against circularity, and against connectivity, which is effectively community. And those are the areas where we're really trying to kind of push the envelope for this particular project. And where we're trying to be at the more exemplar range. So what you're seeing here is an excerpt from a footprint action plan. This is a project that I'm working on right now. And probably the best or the easiest visualization is to concentrate on the bar chart on the top right-hand side. So as you've already seen in the process, we set our stall out at the co-creation, and then we review that at every stage through the project. So the stage 1 bar, the top bars here, is where we wanted to be at co-creation. And the stage 2 bars are where we are just as we're about to submit for planning on this particular project. And as you can see, there's already been some movement. And in a number of instances, our outputs and what we're doing is meaning that we're going to improve against those dimensions. So for example, wellbeing and community have improved, but also new constraints have come into the project, or things have arisen which have actually meant that we've had to scale back our ambitions on a couple, and place and nature are an example of that on this particular project. Now, I'm sure you'll all know on a daily basis it's not unusual for barriers to arise as we progress a project. And Footprint as an action plan and as a process does a number of things for us as these barriers and opportunities arise. First and foremost, it keeps our eyes on the prize. It's a clear record of what we set out to achieve and how we plan to do that. So we've always got the stakeholders' voice in our head. It allows us to identify barriers early. So whilst we do these formal reviews at each of the stages, Footprint's always with us. That action plan's always, effectively on the desk, and we're always thinking about it and thinking about how the project's progressing against it. It keeps us focused on all the opportunities. And, as I've already demonstrated, you'll see some of the outcomes. There's been a shift in terms of what's planned against each of the dimensions. I'm sure you've had this experience yourselves where a project hits some issues. It's normally around financial viability. And we've seen, project ambitions watered down. What Footprint does in these situations is it reminds us that there may well be other opportunities that we've taken our eye off. So whilst we might have to scale back on some of those ambitions, there may well be opportunities we hadn't realised or addressed before that we can capitalise on and bring into the project. So it's not just a decline in outputs. It's about what can we continue to think about to sort of make the best project that we can. It reminds us what's most important to the place in question. So when we need to make those difficult decisions, as I said, we've still got the stakeholders' voice in our head. We've got that as a record for the project. And finally, it's also a great communication tool. So, the development timeline, you have lots of different people coming in at different times, not least the contractor at a particular point. And the action plan provides a great basis to communicate what it is we want this project to achieve, how we've been moving towards that, those goals, and how we'll continue to progress. So Footprint is Igloo's own process, and it would be pretty poor if we were just marking our own homework. So governance and independent review is a really critical and important part of our process. We have a Footprint Advisory Board, the FAB, as they're lovingly known, and those are the individuals that you see on the screen here. They are effectively non-execs to Igloo and the Footprint process, and they perform the function of critical friend. They support us with our horizon scanning, and I think it's fair to say that they challenge us and stretch us and keep us on our toes so that Footprint continues to be a market leader in terms of sustainability. And then also we have third-party independent verification. So currently JLL are performing that function for us, and they've carried out a number of verification reports in prior years, and we're just about to get into that process again. And they audit our approach. Are we delivering what we promise? Where can we improve? Are we consistent in our kind of marking of where we are across the country? Because, we work in lots of different places. And that, I think, is a really important part to any process, that that you have somebody to keep reminding you about what it is that you're there to do. Now, I'm going to finish off by just sharing some examples of projects and how Footprint is delivering against those projects. So first of all is a blueprint project. It's Trent Basin, which is the creation of a new neighbourhood in Nottingham. And you'll see from the icons at the bottom there that the exemplars on this project are climate, community and place. Trent Basin is home to a community energy project. There is an enormous Tesla battery on site, and there are PV on the roofs of the houses and the apartments that actually feed the battery. They don't feed the individual houses. And then the battery in turn trades with the grid. So this is also an exercise in grid resilience, which is something that, you know, clearly we'll all be thinking about as we move forward, and the country's infrastructure sort of struggles to keep up with the electrification. So effectively, the battery sells energy to the grid when the grid needs energy, and it buys energy back from the grid when the grid has a glut. And obviously, there's a financial aspect to that, and that generates an income, and that income is then shared out across everybody that lives at Trent Basin. The community aspect was an important one. As I said, this is a new neighbourhood. The photographs in the top left-hand corner there give you an indication of what Trent Basin used to look like. And at one point, it was an incredibly important inland port, but unfortunately, in the mid-1900s, fell into disuse and then was effectively an industrial derelict site behind locked gates. So when we developed the first phase of Trent Basin, the sort of 40 households that moved in there were quite literally living in an industrial landscape. And it was really important to the client to help create some community there. So effectively provided support to set up a residents association, and also seed funded a community fund, which the residents can choose to spend on community aspects within their own community. So they developed a community garden, but also they can use it to reach out to other neighbourhoods nearby and invest in other community aspects, so they make those wider connections. And from a place perspective, we've opened up a beautiful stretch of the River Trent, which is now accessible to the general public, whereas before, as I said before, it was tucked away behind lock gates. This next project, Oakfield, is a project that Igloo have supported the Nationwide Building Society in developing. Nationwide wanted to develop homes that delivered on their values. I mean, they effectively wanted to put their money where their mouth is. And their focus for this project was across a number of things. First and foremost, community. So this site was a brownfield site in the midst of a large existing residential community. So there was an extensive amount of community engagement that went on, and key things came out of that. So there's a park within this development, which is available to everybody, so not just people living on the new development. Residents told us about, where they walk their dogs and the routes they had to cut through to get into the centre of town, and those have been preserved through the development. Climate was a critical issue here, and whilst you're looking at a CGI, these homes are actually, the first phase is now completed, and these homes are coming online now. So, if you're in the Swindon area, you can go and have a look at them. From a climate perspective, the homes are pretty much future home standard now. And also from a wellbeing perspective, the client wanted to have homes that provided for a real kind of mixed generational community, and there are aging in place homes here and designed to support different people at different stages of their life. Fruit Market, this, I'm pleased to say, just recently won a Housing Design Award for Building for a Healthy Life. It's a three-phase development, each set around a communal garden. The scheme incorporates custom build, so Igloo supported members of the public in designing their own homes, sort of within a design framework, and speculative housing. It's the It's the only family housing being built in the centre of Nottingham, and the fabric is at Future Home standard, and the first phases will be ready sort of end of first quarter next year. So these homes are already coming online. And then my very final slide is Sunderland and the Home of 2030. So Igloo are fortunate enough to be working with Sunderland City Council on their Sunderland Riverside Regeneration Project. Now, a few years ago, Igloo, together with Useful Projects, Expedition Engineers and Mawson Kerr, banded together to enter a design competition called the Home of 2030. And we're fortunate enough to be joint winners of that competition. And really delighted to say that some of the Home of 2030 homes are going to form part of Riverside Sunderland and also be part of an expo which Sunderland City Council are planning. So Home of 2030 is about circular design, it's about net zero carbon, it's about ageing in place. So we're really excited to see those homes coming online. So thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation. I hope that through explaining the footprint process, you have some idea about how we approach tackling some of those difficult decisions, and be very happy to take or hear your questions.
Thanks so much, Sam. For those of you who would like to ask questions, there is to my right a Q&A bubble tab. So if you put your questions in there. Sam, I'm going to kick off while our audience gets their questions ready. What are you seeing as the current, I guess, challenges to your ambition, or some of the greatest challenges you face to the things that you want to do?
Well, I mean, I think, everybody is having a challenge with viability right now. As an industry and as a society, we've gone through some unprecedented times of late, and that's definitely playing out in our world, in the development world. But then I think, the viability piece, which is significant, I think, throughout our careers, I'm sure people have had to deal with that. And, we're finding we're having to go back and rework things. Probably the bigger challenge at the moment is that we're spending a lot of time thinking about embodied carbon at Igloo and about how we can really sort of bring that down, in our work. And clearly refurbishment, all those things. But it's one of the challenges we're finding is that the if you like, people like the NHBC or other sort of statutory bodies, it's about them catching up with what's going to help us do that. And we've had situations where we haven't been able to keep an existing building because we couldn't get anybody to provide a warranty on that building, even though we've done significant amounts of work there. So I think that whole piece about how we use our resources and also, the materials. So timber is clearly a really important material when you're thinking about embodied carbon. And it's about the regulatory landscape catching up with that. I think we're finding that to be something of a challenge.
So I'm hearing two different prongs. One is viability and kind of an economic prognosis. And is that, founded in the kind of uncertainty on the time, but is there also uncertainty in a kind of a longer view in some of these, investment in some of these places, or is it really just based in the current?
No, I think it's really based in the current. I think, as I said, we have the great fortune that we have. It's really important to us that we always have a strong alignment with our clients in terms of vision and values. And I think, and particularly if you think about working with local authorities, they're about legacy for their citizens. They're about, the long term in terms of where we're working. So I don't think there's any lack of aspiration for the long term, and understanding that, these things can take a significant amount of time. But I think that right now it's about sort of, it's getting those individual elements of that particular project or master plan or whatever. It's about how you can bring those to market and make them work.
Interesting. And embodied carbon's actually in our next session. So actually really lovely segue there. Sam, to our next one. There's a question here from Tom Ebden, an architect. Has Footprint really changed the way you work, or just the way you appear to work or report on the way you work? I mean, that's always the criticism of frameworks, right? So has it really changed the way you work? Were you already working this way? And if it has changed, I guess, where?
I suppose I'm, in some ways, I'm fortunate that that having joined Igloo 5.5 years ago, I've spent a lot of time working in a non-Igloo environment, and I think that one of the things that struck me most strongly when I joined Igloo was the alignment and commitment to Footprint. So Footprint's pretty much existed as long as Igloo has, and Igloo's been in existence now for 22 years, I think. When Igloo's a relatively small business on purpose, and when you join, Footprint is the thing that you have to get on board with and you have to incorporate. So genuinely, it's how we do things. It's not a little process that sits off to the side that we can talk about and present in sessions like this. It's absolutely at the core of everything we do. And I think, you know, for those that have hopefully sort of worked with Igloo or worked on that process, they would be able to confirm that that is the case. So no, it's not a sideshow at all. It's absolutely, it's at the core of what we do.
I respect there's a lot of detail in the kind of discussions. It always looks like there's just like a little box there, but it was struck by the first one that says go, no go. That's quite a huge decision, and it's just this one little piece of the so what, I mean, I'd be interested to hear about that initial go, no go kind of fundamental decision tree, and and what's happening in that discussion from a climate resilience and sustainability point of view.
So the go, no go is typically conducted by whoever's leading the development together with one or two directors of the business. And I think, if you like, I suppose the standard business practice, the resourcing, all of those things is important. But actually, really, the focus of the go, no go is, are our values aligned with the client's values? Because some clients, unfortunately, they set off with great aspirations, but then they're sort of, you know, well, actually, you know, we need to put those to one side, and we're going to sort of just deliver this market scheme. And this might sound a bit arrogant, but Igloo doesn't do that. So we're very careful about who we work with and the projects that we bid on, because we do. We've just recently, as part of a consortium, secured the regeneration of Winchester Town Centre, for example, and worked really hard on that. So really delving into, if it's a bid, what the documents are asking, what's the genuine intent there. And then once we've sort of satisfied that's what the client wants to do, it's then about what are our opportunities, what could we do in this place. So it might be, you know, what options are there around circularity? Are there sort of existing buildings we can reuse? I mean, I think what I haven't talked about today is there's a huge amount of R&D that goes on in Igloo that sits behind the process. So a couple of my colleagues, Peter Conboy, Michelle Williams, recently worked with UKBC on their latest carbon documentation. And we've done a number of those things in the past. One of my colleagues has been working with a materials manufacturer, an insulation company, that actually they've developed a product that sequesters carbon, for example. So it's, you know, what can we bring to play to really optimize what we can deliver for Footprint? So I suppose the challenge is explaining it. Certainly, is we know Footprint really well, and we've got the benefit of some very talented people within the team that are really, you know, dimension experts. So we have a carbon lead, we have a wellbeing lead, and it is very much a conversation with those individuals about, here's the place, what can we deliver, and so you say the go, no go, it's a little box on the screen, but it's absolutely the thing that sets us for success.
And you want to see that partner's actually interested in us bringing that value to the table? And also, is there the opportunity for us to kind of deliver on well-being, deliver on sustainability, deliver on these values? So it's kind of a two-prong.
Yeah, I mean, as an example, because and obviously not all clients are made the same, but I'm working with an NHS trust in the Midlands at the moment, and but actually to develop an academic building in an area which is pretty high up on the index of social deprivation, which is all about training people from the local community and then linking them with jobs in the NHS. But this is a really exciting trust. They're going to follow, they've adopted the NHS net zero standard for that building. There's been a huge amount of community engagement. They're very rooted in the area they develop. So having those initial conversations with the client about what they wanted to do and really getting assured about their commitment to a sustainable approach to what they were doing was a fundamental part of engaging and in taking that project forward.
I think it's interesting you mentioned the challenges of embodied carbon briefly, and it is something that we're picking at, especially in terms of structures, in our next session. But I guess that's the kind of paradox of development within climate resilience, is often that you do emit carbon through construction. So it's kind of like you're in trouble from that go, no go decision.
Yeah,
is that absolutely increasingly more difficult conversation for Igloo, especially as you said, there are blockers to kind of maybe retrofit or maybe, kind of net zero construction still being something fairly theoretical. So, it's that can you do, the kind of balance of do nothing and do no harm?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it is an increasing challenge, and interestingly enough, in presenting this session, I'm missing a footprint advisory board meeting, and one of the things that they're talking about today is we're working with one of our key clients around their scope 3 emissions, which are effectively the work that we're doing for them, all of that development work and how we might approach that. And there aren't actually any easy answers to that right now. So, we work very hard to reduce as much as possible the sort of, if you like, the carbon that's going into our activities. But there's still a gap, and there's still, from all the work we've done, you still either need an offset or you need kind of a different approach to things. And the challenge for our clients is that they understand it, they're very committed to it, but also it's about, there is a finance, money costs money. So when they're investing in development, they have to make some money back. They're not being bad about that, So we're working really hard on it. I think we don't have any easy answers right now, but I think the important thing is, you could just put it to one side and think somebody else will fix that problem for me. Or you can, it sounds a bit trite, but you can try and be part of the solution, and you can engage in the wider industry conversations and research and, invest your time and energy in trying to find the routes through that. And that's what we're doing.
And I think we can sort of expect it to get more difficult, because once we've cut all of the easy to cut carbon, I mean, it should, in theory, get harder and harder to continue to make that.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
There's a question here from David Claspy from Sustrans. How do you ensure that the stakeholders, I'm assuming we're talking about that co-creation and co-design piece, how do you ensure that stakeholders represent the views of the wider community? We have worked around low traffic neighborhoods, and despite engaging, have seen significant opposition, and our 20-minute neighborhoods dead in the water. How do we work past conspiracy theories? So kind of a two-part, but digging a bit into that community engagement. Do you do stakeholder selection to ensure it's representative?
It's a mix. I mean, the person who posed the question is absolutely right. How do you know that you've got a representative selection? And I suppose one of the ways we approach that is we've got a whole series of different actors in those meetings. So we've got, our professional teams that we work with, who again, we're very aligned in terms of, as companies, what our goals are and where we want to get to. We've got stakeholders that will come with different views, and then we've got, the sort of client, the project sponsors. And I have to say, we've got a couple of very capable people in the business that do a pretty good job of navigating between those potentially conflicting approaches. Do we always get it right? I don't know. I think others will need to be the judge of that. But just going to the question about 20-minute neighbourhoods and about, active travel. So as a difficult example, I suppose, a project that I'm responsible for, where we were planning to have largely a car-free neighbourhood. So taking a sort of European model, car barn, but no cars really going into the heart of the development other than for mobility or for delivery, and keeping shared surfaces and active travel through the site. That went through a very lengthy pre-app process. Everybody was on board. We did public consultation, and actually it was through COVID, so we did an online public consultation where we had more responses and a greater diversity of age groups than I think we've ever had on any of our consultations. And there was a great deal of support for it, sort of, if you like, the public at large could see the benefits of it. And then we get to planning, and then the highways team decide that's not what they want to happen, and now we're having to deal with how we try and limit traffic into the development whilst still having a highway that the Highways Authority have now decided they want, which they didn't want previously. So I feel the question, the person who posed the question's pain, definitely. But again, I think we're definitely from the die trying camp rather than just the give up and go home, So we know from the people that move into our developments that they're seeking out those active travel routes. And we know that, so take Trent Basin as an example. We have, there's a car club there. We've been working with adjacent developers to make pedestrian and cycle connections to key parts of the city. It's still a bit of a challenge. But I think that, you've just got to keep chipping away. There are always going to be disappointments in what we do, and we're not always going to kind of achieve everything all at once. But certainly from sort of what we see and the people that often come and occupy our developments, there is a genuine change. There's a genuine desire to do that differently, and so I think I think there's still some hope there.
I think also, we have to remember 20-minute neighborhoods are not really a new thing. That was just a new term. We can just call it something else and carry on, right?
Exactly.
There's part of it's a certain amount of logic. But I wonder if there's something about trust here in this conversation, just because I think some of this is about community contracts, and often we say, oh, the transport links will be improved, but of course there's been a violation of trust in some communities in terms of how their bus services or train services have been running, or how traffic calming measures have impacted them personally, because they don't have the alternatives that we would like them to have in their areas. So maybe there is kind of an underlying question about trust between people who develop and people who are in areas that are being developed. And does Footprint deal with that in some way?
I think what Footprint does is we have a consistency of approach and a consistency of value set. So we can't do it all, unfortunately. I can't, we can't make the transport companies put the links in that they said they were going to. Something's changed for them, something in their business model's changed. And, often commitments or promises are made with all good intention, and then, things happen. It's not always somebody not being entirely authentic about what they were planning to do. I think what we found through our engagement, and we do we spend a lot of time interacting with local communities, and then often we're building in phases. So we're also sort of continue to interact with those people that are moving into our homes or into our workplaces. And I suppose the best you can achieve in something like that is that those individuals can see that you've remained true to that value set. You're still trying to deliver that, and there are other things that have created some barriers, but you'll still be trying to be part of what encourages the next improvement in that area. Or it's not just, oh well, we made that promise, can't do it, never mind. And I think what helps that, though, is I'm very conscious that as Igloo, we spend a lot of years working in places. We don't tend to be a develop, done, go away. We've got our history in Nottingham started in 2005, for example, and here we are still working. Similarly in the Northeast, we've been working there decades. Same in Glasgow. And whilst we've got some sort of, I suppose, newer geography opening up, we don't tend to do short-term stuff. Anybody that works in Regen knows that you're making a big investment in time there. And I think if you can remain sort of transparent, authentic throughout that, then the community won't always be happy, but I think they will understand what's happened most of the time, and you can have honest conversations with them. I think that's critical.
So we just have 2 minutes left in the session. So it's probably a good time for me to just thank you for sharing the footprint process with us, and maybe a final word from you on whether you think people should adopt frameworks in their own processes if they don't have one already. And then I think we'll segue. We'll be back 10 minutes after this session. Sure. For Richard Dowdall. But yes, tell us your final words. I guess
it's not the most exciting phrase, but what gets measured gets done. And, so having a framework, working, setting out what you're going to do at the outset and then working to deliver against that is, that's, I think, your best chance of success.
Excellent.
And, yeah.
What gets measured gets done. I think that's an excellent mantra to take away from this session. So thank you so much, Sam, for participating, for being part of the Climate Resilience event. Awesome. Can we have a round of emoji applause? And as you fetch that cup of tea and come back, we have Richard Dowdall coming up next with a kind of deep dive into materials and materiality. We're looking at embodied carbon in structures. So we'll see you then.
Thanks, everyone.